Welcome into the Win Daily DFS show pre-lock night before we get you ready for tomorrow's games. I'm Tony Jigsaw, joined by my name, Adam Strangis. It's been like a while, Adam, since me and you have actually been sharing a screen. I've been getting a little break with school. You and Jason been doing your thing, but we got 9 games tomorrow. Before we touch on that, make sure you're following us at Win Daily Sports. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you're hitting the notification bell. Make sure you're tuned into all our great content. We got an NFL draft show tonight because this is recorded the night before. So make sure tonight, check that out as well. Got a lot of important guests on. Make sure you're watching the PGA DraftKings, getting ready for your tournament, the Mexico Open. But Adam, 9 games. And we talked about this real fast, but whose idea was it to slow the game down? Because the hitters, it's just not clicking right now.
The hitters have been miserable, to say the least, to start. It seems like every day you wake up, you see something on Twitter, there's like 50 qualified hitters hitting below like 230 right now. I mean, unless you're in Yankee Stadium and your name's Anthony Rizzo, balls just are not getting out of the yard. Even ones that are getting smoked, you see exit velocities of 110, 100, 112, and they're somehow still staying in the park. So I don't know, man. I'm giving it another couple weeks until we probably see an explosion of offense all of a sudden and they reintroduce the rubber ball or something different. The Mets are already complaining about the baseball. Not complaining. I think that's the wrong way to put it. But, Chris Bassett was pretty open last night about how the baseballs suck. And everyone's told MLB this and they don't seem to care. You're going to hit a crisis point somewhere along the line here because there's just not a lot of offense going on. And you can see it. Like it's very obvious that they have screwed with this baseball once again, which I don't understand why we did in the first place. But here we are down the rabbit hole with the baseball. It's just completely off kilter right now.
Yeah, listen, and of all people, and this isn't a Philly bias thing, but the Mets are playing, aren't they? Like in first place. Like, stop. Like, you're okay. Like, relax. You're doing fine. All right. You don't need to complain about the ball. But speaking of the NLEs, we're going to talk about right away. We're going to go in the stacks, and I know. Listen, full transparency, this isn't a great like off the wall slate where it's like 100% you're going to zone in on that one particular team. You're probably going to mix and match, but right off the bat, we're talking a little Philadelphia Phillies tomorrow. They're red hot, Adam. They won 3 straight. The bat's starting to come alive. But what do you like about this Philly stack tomorrow?
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head that like we've kind of been preaching, we haven't been doing big 5-man stacks.
Yep.
It just hasn't worked out quite as well as I think it will in the later parts of the season. And I think tomorrow's another one just like that. There's not really a pitcher that like is just a complete nightmare on the mound. Even the ones that have some kind of shaky metrics, they still don't look terrible through others. So Senzatella, it's not that he's a full-on gas can, but his K rate's under 10%. And man, if you can't miss some bats against these Philly lineup, they're gonna do some damage. Like if they're getting bat on ball, yeah, you can generate ground balls, but it's not like Senzatella sitting here with 65% ground ball rate. It's high, but it's nowhere near as high as it's going to need to be. He throws a fastball a lot. Hoskins, Harper, Castellanos, Schwarber, all these guys just crush righty fastballs. It's still a bad spot for him. And honestly, that's one of the where we can probably get one of the cheaper players in the slate. I expect him to be pretty popular. He led off today. Odubel Herrera is only 2,300. That's probably going to be almost a lock in cash if he leads off again. And honestly, even in GPP, I don't really mind using him in those Philly stacks because it's kind of hard to replicate being in the leadoff spot for a lineup that's dangerous at $2,300.
Yeah, I don't disagree. He had a monster shot tonight. He will forever be a scumbag in Jigsaw's mind.
Yes.
For real, full transparency, but it is what it is. If he's going to put money in my pocket, unfortunately, I guess I have to do it. But here's the funny thing about the stack. You made a good point because when you look at the pitching matchup here, he's given up 26 hits in 3 starts. That's a ton of balls on the ground and in play. 26 hits. I mean, the guy's pitched 13 innings and he's given up 26 hits. It's like 2 hits an inning. So, I mean, at the end of the day, you have guys on this, especially Castellanos is batting over 300. You got guys who are making good contact with the ball. You're right; they are going to swing and miss, but there's an opportunity for a lot of hits. I preach positive point production. I hate guys that get 0-0-0s, those power hitters. And I think tomorrow is a good idea for this Phillies lineup to actually give you that positive point production, especially with these people right here. So, but we look on the other side uh, from the pitching matchup, and you have specifically for cash only, but Justin Verlander, the ageless veteran, has continued to be a stud. My man Verlander, he is your guy in the ageless slate, isn't he?
Yeah, we continue to see, people are paying up for pitching. And when we get a pitcher like Verlander, guys like him have been very chalky. I think some of the offensive struggles, have some reasoning to do with that because getting pitching right, especially in cash, is just uber important right now because bats have been a little bit unreliable. The thing with Verlander is, it's not that he's pitched poorly. I mean, the K rate's 27.8%, xFIP 3.27. Everything looks pretty good. I would say my biggest, red flag, quote unquote, would be the swing strike rate is just 9.5%. It's not even double digits, and that's a small concern. I don't think it's going to necessarily bite him in the Texas start. I'm perfectly fine locking him into cash games and building around him. I don't necessarily think he's a full lock in GPP where this is kind of an interesting pitching slate where I think the mid range especially has some serious options. I I probably will be underweight on Verlander in GPP and just hope he doesn't drop that 30-35 DK because I do think there are some interesting things in his profile that maybe he's showing that little bit of age and kind of still coming back from Tommy John.
Yeah. No, I think you're spot on. I mean, he has all the makings of that guy who's gonna, in August, just all of a sudden turn it on. Like,
Right.
he's just that's what it's leading up to, especially if Houston's gonna be in contention for postseason play. But 10-1, like you said, I mean, listen, obviously he's the best. If he's good, he's the best pitcher on the slate. But at 10-1, like you said, that's hard, especially when you have a lot of mid-range options. I mean, we just talked about the Phillies being on a roll. I don't know what you feel about Zach Wheeler at 8,300, kind of giving you that mid-tier value, so to speak. Because if he's Zach Wheeler of old, 8,300 is a bargain, isn't it?
It is a bargain. I think my biggest fear and the reason I wouldn't have Zach Wheeler in anything but MME formats, his velocity started to tick back up in his last start. And I was like, oh, okay, like maybe we're getting the Wheeler back of old. He's finding it, short in spring training, all that. He lasted about 4 innings and that velocity started to tick back down. And you saw the wheels kind of fall off. K rate's under 18%. His swinging strike rate is only 7% right now. He's really not fooling anyone. It seems like that velocity dip is really, really hurting him. I think he's getting there. I'm kind of not ready to take that swing quite yet. And part of it is because we do have other options. And one of those options, it's not on DK. We don't always talk about FanDuel a ton, but FanDuel does have the Toronto Blue Jays game. They went to the 3 o'clock window. On FanDuel, you can pitch Alek Manoah, excuse me. Especially against a righty heavy Red Sox lineup. And against righties, he has just been really lights out. The 278 FIP or XFIP, excuse me, 28.6% K rate, 128 WOBA against the right side of the plate. Red Sox should send out at least 6 of them tomorrow. So on FanDuel, you can definitely make that pivot.
That's a great call. Manoa has been he's a strikeout pitcher, man. He's a strikeout pitcher. So and listen, you bring up the righty lefty thing, so that's obviously a good play. Let me ask you about real fast one more pitcher before we move on to our infamous gas can. What about Scooble tomorrow? You like that matchup at 8,500?
I do because, after Byron Buxton, who would, scare the bejesus out of any pitcher, the way he's hitting right now, I get it.
You got that
But like
right.
after him, there's not a ton of threats. Carlos Correa really hasn't found his way yet. Gary Sanchez, you're lucky if he makes contact. Miguel Sano, kind of the same thing. But
Yep.
with Skubal, he doesn't have a big track record. So listen, he's going to have ups and downs. There's going to be starts where it looks like it's a good spot, and he's going to get smacked. He's a young guy. you but he's not short on talent. After that White Sox start, which is going to be a tougher one for lefties all year long. 24 and 26 DK points, 11.2 innings pitched, 13 strikeouts, 0 earned runs. I mean, that just speaks to where his talent level is at. The Tigers have a really good lefty in him. So yeah, I think even at 85 and 88 over on FanDuel, he's well within play. But I don't go for him for cash because you're not going to have that consistency quite yet from the young kid.
Yeah, listen. If you can get a guy who's going to give you those kind of numbers right in the medium range, and that's why you just got to be careful. Listen, Verlander is a name, and he still has the stuff, and he's got a good matchup against Texas. But 10-1 as opposed to 8-5, that's a tremendous drop off. It's a
Right.
tremendous drop off, right? So that $1,600 is a big number that can get you that extra bat, especially in a lineup. Now, speaking of bats, we're going to talk about a pitcher who's going to be hit up maybe, and that's Mr. Quintana. So Quintana for you is your gas can. You said indirectly, but I guess because it's just that the weight of this slate, the way it falls. But why do you think Quintana's going to get lit up a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's almost by default, sort of, right? Because we kind of talked about there's not necessarily the big gas can on this slate, but the Brewers have not hit lefties well yet, and it's been kind of a surprise because Andrew McCutchen, Hunter Renfroe, like these guys were brought in, as guys that would hit lefties and kind of help them along in that facet. And I'm just not a big believer in Quintana. I mean, he's sporting the xFIP of almost 5, and just like Senzatella, his K rate's super low at 13.6%. Same idea as Senzatella here. If you're not going to hit, or if you're not going to miss bats, and you're not generating, a huge ground ball rate, I'm not going to believe in you. I'm just not. So McCutchen, Adames, Renfroe, even Tyrone Taylor, if he makes the lineup, that's another really cheap bat to throw into your stack. I just don't believe that the Brewers are going to hit lefties this poorly all the way through, and this is probably a good one to start some of that positive regression.
Yeah, it could be. Milwaukee. Yeah, we'll see what happens, man. I like my boy Cuts. I know you're a Cuts guy. I'm a Cuts guy. Obviously, his roots are in Pittsburgh. We got those few years out of him in Philly. Always remember him leading off the season with a home run when everybody thought he was done. It's a shame he tore his ACL, but it's good to see him still playing and getting it done. Now, we talk about aces of value, and you brought up Zimmerman off air. And we talked about obviously we're continuing with this mid-range play here, but $6,800. Now you're taking him up against the Yankees lineup. What stands out for you for Zimmerman?
For me, it's definitely risky, and on the FanDuel side, you can't even consider him. He's over 9,000 for some reason.
Wow, what a
I mean,
difference!
it's ridiculous. You cannot
Wow.
even consider him on FanDuel. He is strictly an SP2 play. You need to pair him with somebody that you think is going to get some strikeouts here. But honestly, through his 15 innings so far, his xFIP's under 3. He's got a K rate of 27.1%. The Yankees lineup typically will do a little bit better against lefties. They're a very, very boomer bust lineup. We've talked about this before.
Yep.
Yeah, there's going to be games where they just rock people, but there's going to be games where they don't. And if you look at what Zimmerman has done so far, he's had to pitch against the Yankees once. He's had to pitch against the Angels. These aren't the easiest lineups. He's walked right through them. 5 innings against the Yankees, 6 strikeouts, only 4 hits allowed. He got through the Angels lineup with only 2 earned and 6 strikeouts again. I'm not saying he's the greatest pitcher ever or anything like that, but again, this is all about salary and what kind of value you can get off it. And if Zimmerman is going to be ignored, which I kind of think he will on this slate because there's a lot in that mid range that's interesting, especially a guy like Freddie Peralta, who's not quite $1,000 more against a weak Pirates lineup. There's not going to be a lot of people running to the door to put Zimmerman in this lineup. But, if you look, if you can get what he did the past 2, 19, 21 DK, it's under $7,000 against what's probably going to be a somewhat popular lineup in the Yankees. Buddy, I'll take a chance on that all day in GPP.
Yeah, you made a good point at the beginning too, making sure you're pairing him up with somebody who you're very confident in, right? You can't
Right.
like when you get these right, you get these plays. We talk about these value plays all the time, but you can't have 2 value plays as your pitchers. You got to have one consistent force, and then one guy who you can hope it get you value. But it's funny, I'm thinking about this. I don't know if you saw the Phillies game tonight, but CJ Cron hits number 7. And I'm thinking in my head of what you mentioned about Wheeler with him lasting 4 innings, that velocity started to drop a little bit. This is a day game tomorrow in Philadelphia, and the wind is going to be blowing out. We've had 35 to 40 mile an hour wind. So I listen, I don't know what the numbers are right now. And I can tell you this right now. We all know that it's very, very hard, especially with the ball not getting out of the stadium, to hit on home run props. But I'll tell you what, man, I'm feeling a back-to-back day home run prop with CJ Cron. I mean, listen, he hit one tonight. He going up against Zach Wheeler, who is probably going to leave a ball over the plate, and this dude's been crushing the ball. So if that wind's blowing out, it's his Bank Park. Look for my man CJ Cron or Cron. I've heard it announced 2 separate names, so I'm just going to call him CJ, and we're going to see. I'm thinking, what do you think about? It's probably going to be like plus 500, plus 550 to hit a home run tomorrow. We shall see. He's been pretty good though.
He has been, and honestly, again, this probably wouldn't be my single entry stack, but I don't mind a Rocky stack. People don't normally play them outside of cores. If Wheeler still hasn't found that velocity, man, he could be in trouble here.
Yep, and especially Phillies won 3 in a row, so they're down to have a little letdown here, right?
I don't mind a Rocky stack at all.
Nah, I agree with you. I really do. And you look, you can get guys a pretty good value. I mean, Chris Bryant's day to day, I doubt that he plays tomorrow just because it's a day game, right? So, he probably going to sit. My man Connor Joe's up there at 5,600, but you can get some really good value here. You really can. I love Elias Diaz. I love Elias Diaz at the catcher position at 4,500. I think tomorrow could be a good day for him too.
I've loved him since he was in Pittsburgh. I typically play him against lefties, but he's cheap enough that, I have no problem throwing him into that stack.
Yeah, there's a lot of good plays right here for tomorrow, but there's going to be a lot of question marks too. So just make sure you pick wisely. And like we've always said, make sure that you're not grabbing all the value plays. Make sure that you're getting some consistent point production, positive point production, like I like to call it, in that lineup for tomorrow. Now, I know Adam said his FFVP was going to be Odubel. I'll drop my FFVP tomorrow afternoon or late evening. I'll probably do it because we didn't touch on the late 2 games. I'll make an FFVP for those games so you guys get some content at Win Daily Sports as well. We'll see. Tonight, the guy didn't, I was going 2 for 2. Looks like I'm going to be 2 for 3. So see if I can pick up this night tomorrow night. But as always, make sure you follow us at Win Daily Sports. Adam, any final thoughts before we get out of here for tomorrow's slate?
I would just say don't overstack. Make sure that at this point, until the ball kind of normalizes, and really until we get, a slate that really looks like some horrid pitching, 2, 3 guys, maybe 4 max, just try and remember the offense isn't hitting the way we all thought it would be.
Exactly. Just listen, just sprinkle tomorrow and save your money for the big time on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday when the big ballers play. That's all, because you'll get the better bats over the weekend. So for Tony, for Adam, we're going to get out of here. Everybody stay safe, stay healthy. Follow us at Win Daily Sports. Subscribe. Make sure you're watching the NFL Draft Show tonight at 8 p.m. And we'll catch you right back here tomorrow for some more plays.